comedy nights tomorrow night.
At 6:30. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited. This is the very first time I had the opportunity to get something like this set up, and I really want to thank all the candidates and our moderator very much. John Anastasia is our moderator. He is from the Bucks County Herald. I'm the editor. And he's going to moderate. We have some set questions that we have set all the candidates in advance, and we're going to get through as many of those as we can for all of you. We will not be taking any questions from the audience. We have the set questions in advance. As I've said to all of our candidates, and I will say to all of us, and I know I don't need to say this at all, but I ask everyone to be respectful. Make sure that we listen. This is a great opportunity for us to hear right from the candidates things that are going to matter to us, and I'm really excited to have it. So without further ado, silence your cell phones. If you have your phone, you don't want to be the person that it rings in the middle, and I'm glad you said that because I have two and not one of them are silenced. And that goes for you guys too. You don't want to be sitting up there and have to answer the phone. But yeah, by all means, silence your cell phones, Charles. There we go. There we go. I'm silenced. Thank you. And without further ado, we're going to get started. So have a wonderful night. Thank you for coming.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is John Anastasia. I'm the editor-in-chief at the Bucks County Herald newspaper. I'm happy to be here tonight, and I'm happy that you're here too, playing a vital piece in our democracy here tonight. Hearing from the candidates that you'll have the opportunity to vote for in a couple of weeks. So I appreciate you being here to learn more about them. I also appreciate the work of Charles and his team to get this debate off the ground, this forum off the ground. I know that it's a difficult and sometimes thankless job. So thanks very much, Charles. Without further ado, I will introduce the candidates. We have Joe Van Houten. Houten? Yes. All right, thanks, sorry about that. Dan Wood and Christina Media. Meda. Okay. All right. As you can see, I know none of these candidates personally. So you can rest assured that I don't have a rooting interest in this. As Charles mentioned, the questions were given in advance, so they had time, a couple of weeks, to prepare for this evening. And I'm just going to start right at the top, and I'm going to go right down the list. We're going to keep a 2-minute timer. I'm going to do my best to keep everybody within 2 minutes. So I'd ask for your consideration on that point. Thanks very much. Question number 1, I'm going to start. Who's on the far left?
Joe Van Houten.
Joe Van Houten. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start on the far left with Joe, and we're going to work your way toward me with the first question. And then I think what we'll do is we'll go around the horn. Christina will be the first crack at the second question, and we'll go throughout. Yeah. Okay, so that's a good point. I'm going to let you go first, too. Okay, for Joe, question number 1, what inspired you to run for this office, and what makes you qualified for the position?
I'm a 30-year resident here in Doylestown Township. I've served on boards and commissions for over 20 years here in Doylestown. I currently am the chairman of the Municipal Authority. I chair the Public Water Sewer Advisory Committee. And outside of that, I also am a small business owner. I've owned my own business since 2007. And for the past going on over 40 years, have been in executive positions at many levels in different companies. So I have a lot of profit in P&L experience at different companies. As a volunteer on different boards and commissions here in the town, I have a lot of experience with how the Doylestown Township operates. In addition to that, I've always felt that leadership isn't about being red or blue. Leadership is about representing the people of the township. And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected supervisor, my intention is to leave politics at the door and just do the job of representing the citizens of the township.
Thanks very much, Joe. Dan, same question.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Dan Wood. I am one of your current supervisors here in Doylestown Township. And before I get rolling, I just want to thank all of you for coming out. Thank John, thank Charles, and the candidates on stage for being here tonight. So for what inspired me to run, I can go back to my time in Boy Scouts. I was a member of Troop 71 here in Doylestown out of Coots Elementary. And I was very fortunate I was part of a troop that really churned out a lot of Eagle Scouts, and we did that in the Township Municipal Building, where we had our Court of Honors. So that was my first time to see the dais where the supervisor sat, and not having no idea I'd sit there one day. When it came time for me to get my Eagle Scout award, there's a part of the Eagle Scout charge that goes, too often people use their strength and intellect for selfish purposes. We charge you to use your abilities for the common good. And that's something that's always stuck with me, and I quote a lot. And in 2017, I decided to run for the first time because I was tired of how the political scene was happening, and you can only complain on Facebook so much before you have to get off your butt and do something about it. So I got involved in my community. As far as why I'm qualified, I'm the only person on this stage that has done the job of supervisor. Over the past 6 years, I've paved over 40 miles worth of road, reformed our pensions, saving the township at least $1 million in fees alone. I've managed our budgets, rebuilt our parks and trails, and I've overseen our staff and talked to more residents than I can possibly count. I was born here in Doylestown. I grew up on Woodridge Drive, where my parents still live. After I graduated Penn State, I moved back here, and I live on Duane Road with my 9-year-old son. And I strongly believe that this town is a wonderful place, and that I have the hands-on experience to keep making it better for everyone who calls this place home.
Thanks, Dan. All right, Christina, go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So my name is Christina Maida. I'm going to start with the first part of the question, which was what inspired me to run. I also grew up here. I went K through 12 through our great public schools, and when it came time for me to raise a family, I wanted to do it here. So I moved back here in 2022, and what I saw was a community that was sort of unrecognizable from the one that I grew up in a lot of ways. It had really been changing, I think, in terms of the rhetoric that was going on across the aisle, and I thought, gee, I need to get involved before I start having kids. So what I did was I met people like Dan Wood, who was serving as township supervisor at the time, and I saw somebody my age, right, mid-30s, who's really doing the work to reach across the aisle and work with residents of the community to make sure that our needs are met. In terms of what makes me qualified, I did my undergraduate degree at Princeton University. I went on to a career in finance and asset management in New York City, where I put myself through graduate school part-time at New York University. I got a master's in public administration instead of business administration, intentionally, because the focus there is how to manage organizational resources across the nonprofit and public and private sectors. I also led a weekly night class as an adjunct instructor at New York University that covered financial management, so covering budgets, accounting, economics, debt finance, investment management, all those super exciting things. And those are skills that really lend themselves to the role of township supervisor, which is very administrative and very operational in nature. My parents live here, my grandparents live here, and the well-being of this community for people who live here today and for the next generation, like my daughters, really is my North Star.
Thanks, Christina. I'm going to stay with you on the second question. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing our community right now?
Sure, so I could talk about how our fire department needs volunteers, or how our roads need to be paved, how we need clean drinking water. But I really actually believe that the biggest challenge facing our community is the divisiveness and the division, where people truly don't believe that they can get along with people of the other party, right? We have friends and neighbors who have excommunicated each other just because of who we vote for, and I think that's a real shame. So as Township Supervisor, I will lead by example. I will reach across the aisle. Like Mr. Van Houten said, I think you leave politics at the door for a job like this, and regardless who a resident voted for or what party they're affiliated with, if they come to me and say, hey, I need something done, I need some help, what can you do? My answer is, I'm all in. Whatever you need, I'm there for you.
Okay. Thanks. Dan, same question.
Thank you. For me, looking forward over the next couple of years, we really have to look at how we address the funding and personnel matters related to our fire departments and our ambulance services. And this isn't just an issue unique to Doylestown. It's a problem across the state that we're struggling with right now. And actually this Saturday I will be attending a conference of county officials to talk about how we can address this, to meet with different fire chiefs, my mistake, and ambulance leaders to learn what they need and what we can do to help them. And so when you pay your taxes, we get our fire and ambulance taxes are passed right through to those departments, and thankfully they're both pretty well funded right now. Where they're really struggling is with volunteers. And they have some fantastic volunteers that have been doing this for decades, but they'll be the first to tell you that they can't keep it up and they need fresh young blood in the system. When I was at a conference in Pennsylvania for supervisors, we were talking about this issue, and someone stood up and said, the problem is that young people just don't want to volunteer anymore. And another gentleman on the older side stood up and said, well, look, that's just not true. We have high schoolers that want to volunteer to be firefighters and go through the training, and it's hours and hours of training. And we train them up, and then they go off to college, and they don't come back. And the problem isn't because they don't want to come back. They can't afford to come back. And that is really one of the key issues. So when we look at addressing the volunteer problems we have with our fire and ambulance squadrons, we also need to look at the affordability issues happening across Doylestown and the greater region, so that we have a pool of volunteers going forward.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Joe, same question.
So I agree that affordability is one of the issues that this election is about. And part of that has to do with the property taxes that we're paying here in the township. Just as an example, before coming here today, I decided to pull out my property tax bill from 2019. And then I compared it to what my property tax bill is for this year. My property taxes went up by 43% from 2019 through 2025. And they're projected to continue to increase all the way through until 2029 and beyond. So one of the things that I would work on as a supervisor would be, how can we make Doylestown Township affordable for all the residents that currently live here and those that want to be able to call this fabulous town home. And part of the start with that is to take a look at the current budget, future budgets, start reining in spending, and being able to, again, address the affordability for people who want to be able to live here in a township. We shouldn't be able to continue to raise taxes year after year. We've had 37% increase in property taxes just over the past 2 sessions. You add into that what the current increases are, and like I said, 43% just from 2019 until this year. And it's going to continue to project it going forward. Residents like yourselves shouldn't have to make a decision, You know, geez, can I afford to stay in my home? Can I afford to stay to live here in the township? Young children, like my son and daughter, who would love to be able to live here in Doylestown Township, you know, they're looking at the property taxes and thinking, Dad, I really can't afford to do so.
Thanks, Joe.
All right.
Appreciate it. Okay. For our third question of the evening, we'll go to Dan first. The question is, what specific policies or initiatives would you like to champion to address those challenges?
Yeah, so going back to talking about the affordability stuff with our fire and ambulance squadrons, I think Christine and I can both testify that it's really about the price of housing that has gone up. I was lucky to buy my house before COVID, and the prices have skyrocketed since. And so a lot of people just don't have that same opportunity. So when we look at what we have to do to address this, I believe it's a lot more than just taxes. It's addressing that we have an adequate supply of housing, and to do that, we need to pass policies that enable our zoning laws to do that, as well as work with our neighboring municipalities and county officials. As far as what we've been doing for the fire department, one of the things I was proud to pass during my time is a rebate program for taxes for firefighters as an incentive to get them to join, and also as more of a thank you, really, for what they do for us. And I mean, these are all issues we have to do to grow that pool of people who can afford to live here. And you know, these aren't just issues that we're facing in Doylestown. This is happening all across the area. And across the country, to be quite honest. And it's something that we can do our part here and work as part of larger groups to address.
Thanks, Dan. We'll go to Christina next. Same question.
Sure. So as a reminder, my response to the first question was that I think the biggest challenge facing our community is division. You know, as Dan and I have been on this campaign trail locally, we've had the opportunity to have house parties, which maybe some of you have attended over the years here at Pine Run. You know, essentially somebody in a neighborhood invites everybody they know to come sit around a living room, you know, Democrat, Republican, Independent, and get to know the candidates, get to ask them questions, get to know who they are, much like what we're doing tonight, but it's a little bit more one-sided tonight than it is at a, you know, in someone's living room. And there's such a wonderful way to humanize one another. You know, we don't talk about what party someone's from, but we know that it's a mix at these events. And what we all agree on is that, you know, we have much more in common than we do different. And in terms of the divisiveness, I think I deleted all of my social media many years ago, and I got it back for the campaign. And it's been a reminder of why I got off Facebook. You know, there's a lot of hate, there's a lot of name calling, and as somebody who's raising 2 young girls, not to call people names or judge people, it's you know, sometimes I wonder where all the adults in the room went. It's a real shame, and I think that these types of events where we sit across the table from neighbors that have conversations is the best way to make sure that that division slowly fades, because I really do think it can. And Dan and I represent, I think, a rising generation of leadership for this township that really does want to lead with kindness and honesty and integrity.
Okay, thank you. Joe, we're going to head back to you for the fourth question. If elected, what steps would you take to put our township on firmer financial footing?
The first thing I would address would be to put a pause on any spending that's not directly related to our police, our emergency services, and maintaining our infrastructure. You know, we have a fabulous trail system throughout the township. We have great other amenities, but I think until we bring our fiscal house back in order, that we need to put a pause on some of the spending. So again, if it's not related to the police department, the safety of the community, our EMS, or maintaining the infrastructure and roads, then I think we need to step back a little bit, get our fiscal house back in order, get our priorities straightened, and then be able to move forward with some of these projects in the future.
Thanks, Joe. I'm going to jump over Dan now and go to Christina.
Didn't see that coming. So I actually sit on the finance committee of the township, and I have for the last year or two. So we've been talking about this a lot. And if you know anything about our budget system, which I don't expect many people besides the folks on this stage to, our municipality is really the envy of the region because our budgeting system is so public and so transparent and so thorough. We're one of the very few municipalities who forecasts out 5 years. And what that means is we're able to, take a look at the whole picture and say, what do we need to do today to make sure that we are on, firmer footing in the next years to come. At our budget workshop last week, we did, like Mr. Van Houten mentioned, we actually did, review a proposal to cut back on capital spending. What does capital spending mean relative to regular spending? Capital spending is those larger projects, that span years in terms of planning and execution and resources, but also lifespan, right? The Community Recreation Center at Central Park, that was part of our capital spending. So, no threat to your roads, your infrastructure, things of that nature, but that pause is really necessary to help us strengthen our reserves, and it is likely to be what happens in the next budget. I also think that we don't need to jump at every grant opportunity. Grants are great, but they often require a cash outlay that creates an operational crunch elsewhere. So being really strategic and working with our department heads to make sure that we are prioritizing needs before wants.
Thank you. And back to you, Dan.
Thank you. So I do take a little bit of exception with that chart over there where it says in 2023, after Democrats get elected, that the taxes start spiking. Because in the 6 years I've been on the board, the first 4 years, all the years have been bipartisan. The first 4 years were led by 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats, and only the last 2 years were 3 Democrats, 1 Republican, and 1 independent. And in all that time, every budget we passed was a unanimous bipartisan bill that served the needs of the township. The township currently holds a AA1 bond rating, which is about the highest you can get as a municipality. It's the gold standard. When I came onto the board, they had already built a new township building. That cost money. There were discussions to build a community center. That cost money. We had a road system that was, quite frankly, a laughingstock across the area. We had a pension fund that was severely underfunded and costing us money every year. So what I've done over the past couple years, I got that pension fund under control. It is now 99% fully funded. The money we're saving from having it funded has actually reduced the expected tax burden that we're going to face the next year to only be down to $10 for the whole year instead of a much higher projection because of the work we did being fiscally responsible with the pension fund. With the roads, I mentioned earlier that we paved over 40 miles of roads, taking advantage of low-interest loans to get caught up on the roads and really fix our problems. Mr. Van Houten is right. We do need to hit the brakes. We had a lot of capital spending, and now it's time to slow down and really get things back in order and focus on the necessary projects. We have volunteer groups and our staff that have wonderful recommendations for ways to improve things in the township. But we really need to look at what is absolutely necessary to keep things functioning and keep things safe. And that's my goal over the next 6 years is to hit the brakes and really just stay where we are for quite some time.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, next question, we're going to start with Christina. Number 5, if you received a $1 million grant to use in any way that you want, what would you do with it and why?
I hope everyone's excited for a very boring answer. The conservative fiduciary in me would put it away, invest it in a money market fund or a CD that's kicking off 4% a year, strengthen our reserves, pay down our debt service, and have it for when we need it. Like Dan has talked about, we are going to need to study our fire department, how to fund them. Maybe it's a hybrid, paid and volunteers. So there are a lot of needs and a lot of places where that $1 million could go to use. But right now, I think it would be most prudent to save it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to jump over Dan again and go to Joe.
Oh, for starters, unfortunately, grants are not like the lottery. When you get a grant, there usually are restrictions or requirements that you need to follow in order to use the grant. So let's say we were able to get a grant for X purpose for $1 million. The first thing I would do would be to gather the staff at the township building of all the department heads and find out what projects that we currently have on our agenda that we'd be able to fund with the $1 million grant. And then after taking the consideration of the different projects, I'd sit down with our fellow Board of Supervisor members and find out which one of those projects would best benefit the community at large. And then we'd move forward from there. And hopefully that $1 million might have been able to be spread amongst several different projects that were already in the budget. So in the end of the day, we'd be able to help reduce the burden on the community for some of those projects by using that grant money.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Dan?
Yeah, something I like talking a lot about with our township is we've been very good at securing grants over the past couple of years, to the point where we've had other municipalities come to us and ask, how do you guys keep getting all these grants? We don't tell them all the details. But you know, the bike and hike trails are largely funded through either developers putting in parts of trails or grants opportunities we get from federal, state, and local charitable organizations. They cover about 80% of the project. For the community center, I worked with our state representatives to secure $3 million in state grants for that project, and that came with no strings attached other than that we build the building. If I had $1 million, and to be honest, $1 million doesn't go as much as you might think it does in projects. Personally, for me to use any way I want, I would look to use that money to fund our various food banks across the area, especially working with groups like the United Way, Bucks Knocks Out Hunger, the Bucks Opportunity Council, which operates out of Doylestown here, and the Central Bucks Senior Center, which operates Meals on Wheels in this area. And we are a pretty well-off community, and it breaks my heart knowing that there are people that suffer from food insecurity in this area. Now, if I had to spend it directly on the township, I would invest that money into well testing for things like PFAS and other chemicals that are in the system, and then any remediation projects that are needed.
All right, don't turn that mic off yet there, Dan. We're going to stick right with you. The next question is, how would you work with those who don't share your views to find common ground?
Yeah, as I mentioned, like I've never been on a unanimous board of all the same party as a township supervisor. We've always had to work together to come up with common goals. And you know, sometimes there are times we dig in, and sometimes you just need to put that ego aside and realize that you don't have to have your way to move forward. I think one of the great examples I like to bring up is with our community center. We had discussions about what that was going to look like. One of those was, is there going to be a gymnasium on it? I personally voted against that because I was concerned about the additional costs that it was going to add to the project. I lost that vote. I was in the minority. And then we had another vote about adding another tennis court, and I actually voted with a Republican against a Democrat on that because, thank God, the few nonpartisan things we have in this country are tennis courts and pickleball courts, so we don't have to argue over that. But I had somebody come up to me afterwards and say, Dan, are you going to be a problem about this because I didn't want the gym? I said, of course not. I still believe in the community center. I believe in the project going forward. I just want to help fund it. So that's why I went out and spoke with our state senator and representatives and helped secure those grants. And that's why I approved the creation of the Capital Campaign Committee, which raised funds from across the township and from our businesses to help offset the cost of that. Because at the end of the day, I don't need to have my way to move the township forward in a direction that I think is helpful.
Okay, thank you, Dan. We'll go to Christina.
So I think we have to hold dear the fact that we are neighbors, right? That really gets lost in some of these conversations. And when it comes to finding common ground and as it relates to being a township supervisor, I think a big part of being an effective leader is listening, right? And that's easier said than done. I think a lot of us probably throughout our careers or our lives have known people, maybe bosses, maybe family members, who it's their way or the highway. And it's really hard to work with those people. But if you just listen and you take some time to figure out what's really at the root of this, what can we achieve together, you can get a lot done. The board in the last couple of years that Dan championed, put together a human relations commission, and as supervisor, it's something that I'd really like to be involved in, because what they're trying to do is foster these community conversations. Getting a diverse group of people together in a room, in person, no screens, no keyboards, and just talking and learning about one another. And I think that's a really effective way to find that common ground.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Joe.
So I'll give you a real-life example. So I chair the Public Water Sewer Advisory Committee, and trust me, one of the last things people want to talk about is sewers. There's nothing fun about septic systems either. But a couple of years ago, and actually this started 25, 30 years ago when I first moved to the township. The part of the township I live in, which is Pebble Ridge, Woodridge, the on-lot systems were failing. And at the time, they were talking about the need to put public sewers in. And some of you may remember, if you were here then, there was a big meeting over at CB South at the time, and lots of people showed up. And the mantra at the time was, well, we can't really tell you how much it's going to cost until after we approve it. I think we've heard that before, right? Well, that didn't fly. That's also part of the reason why I got involved in the sewer and water committee in the first place. So over the years, imagine the angst that we took from the community members. So there were a lot of people in that area who said, well, my system works fine, but there were a lot of other people whose systems weren't working fine. So it took a lot of going back and forth with all the parties involved. This was not a red issue, a blue issue, an independent issue. It was a Doylestown Township resident issue. And by working with the neighbors and going through the process and really educating people, we were able to, finally bring this project to fruition. But it really is about, as Dan and Christina have said also, it's about reaching across the aisle. This really, being a township supervisor is not about being a Republican or a Democrat. It's about representing the residents and our neighbors here in the township and doing the job to represent their interests first and foremost.
Thank you. Joe, we're going to stay right with you. The next question is, one of the biggest challenges that we face as a community is finding qualified staff that want to work. This is especially seen in frontline positions, such as nurses, nurses' aides, and housekeeping. How would you help to increase the pool of candidates in our area?
So this is actually a topic that's very near and dear. I have a lot of empathy for, not just for Pine Run, but for a lot of the businesses in our community and surrounding communities with this same problem. My wife, who's here tonight, is in the healthcare industry. So is one of our daughters. My sister, we have a lot of family members involved in healthcare, and trying to staff these positions is really difficult. So one of the things I would do would be I'd get together a lot of the business leaders that are being affected by this, sit down with members of the township, find out what the biggest issues are. Is it transportation? Is it taxes? Is it the education? Do we need to work with Del Valle University or some of the other institutions in the area to help have more individuals that are capable to fill these positions? And then I would make sure, most importantly, that we have a lot of those frontline individuals as part of the discussion. The nurses, the housekeepers, the nurses' aides, they should all be part of that discussion in the room at the table with everybody, so they can share their experiences with us, what their life issues are with being able to staff these positions, and then see what we can do as a community to come up with a solution.
Okay, thank you. All right. Dan, go ahead.
So at the risk of sounding like a broken record, you're going to hear some similar things from me, but the problem facing us with the nurses and aid workers is very similar to the same problem we have with volunteers for the fire departments and the EMS squads. They can't afford to live here, or they don't have effective transportation to get up here from where they do live. And we're talking about jobs, and this extends to jobs like teachers and maintenance people too, jobs that can't be done remotely, that have to be done hands-on, where people want to live around like a half hour away from where they work. So to do that, And again, we have to take a hard look at our zoning policies and see where we can allow for housing for these kind of more workforce-related jobs. You know, what they used to call starter-level homes that we kind of don't really have anymore in Doylestown. And to give people a chance to live and work here close by. And again, like I've said, we need to work with our neighboring municipalities. Each of us only has so much land. You don't have to live in Doylestown to work here at Pine Run. You could work in Warrington or live in Warrington. I don't know why you pick Warrington over Doylestown, but you know, that's their choice. And they can come up and work here. So it's really about expanding the access for people, for me, and then as far as what a township supervisor can do, I can think of things you could do on a national level too, but I'm only working out of the township level here. So, you know, maybe doing career fairs that we can host at our new community center as well. But really it comes down to giving people access to either live here or take transportation here to fill those roles for us.
Thank you, Dan. Christina?
So this question is also near and dear to my heart. My mother, my whole life, for the most part, has been a senior caretaker. So she's spent some time here in Pine Run and some time in Mercer Hill, and you know, she's in very high demand. She's always asking, you know, people are asking her, you know, do you have time to take me to the grocery store? Can you know, come bring me to my daughter's, you know, my granddaughter's recital, whatever it may be. The transportation is really a big piece. But not everybody needs a nurse to take care of them, right? Sometimes they just need somebody to help them grocery shop. So I think getting creative about, you know, what these careers look like is something that we can do. But it also comes down to, like we've talked about, affordability. The minimum wage in Pennsylvania is $7.25. It's been that since 2009, when, you know, a gallon of milk costs $3, and now it's $5, $6, $8. And in the same time frame, average monthly rents in our area have doubled. Right, so like we've talked about, it's an affordability issue. A family down the street from us, they've got a couple of their college graduated children living with them. One of them is an ER nurse, and you know, she'd love to buy her own house and, you know, lay down roots here too, but she can't afford it yet. And I think a great way that we can support people like that is through looking at our zoning code and allowing for, you know, that apartment above the detached garage, so that your child or, you know, maybe your grandchildren can be on your property and kind of have their own life and lay down roots and save some money while serving our communities as nurses, as aid workers, and things like that.
Okay. Thank you. Christina, we're going to stay with you for the next question. How would you help to bridge the gap and make government more accountable to the people that it serves?
So as I shared, after college, I spent some time in New York City, where their elected officials and, you know, high-ranking city workers and employees are often embroiled in scandal. We don't have that here, right? We have just such a remarkable staff of people who work for the township, who are accountable to us every single day. And we've got some really, really phenomenal elected officials across the region who really do have the best interests of our community in mind. In terms of bridging the gap, I think making sure that we are continuing to have events like these where we can humanize one another. You know, we have these events like the monthly meetings for the township supervisors and the committees, but people often only show up to those if there's something really big going on or if they have a problem that they need solving. But there's a lot of really good information that comes out of those meetings. So somehow to you know, educate people about here's what's going on in the township at the last, you know, however many meetings that we had. I think driving traffic to the good work that these people do on a day-to-day basis would really help educate folks and maybe lend some trust that, like I said, they are really accountable and doing the right thing every single day.
Okay, thank you. Dan, same question.
So taking on this job, one of the best explanations I ever heard for supervisor, it's a customer service job. And you need to be able to talk with people, work with people, listen to their concerns. And the township's built a number of great resources that have won awards at various state levels, like our newsletters that go out and our weekly email, which if you haven't signed up for, you can go to doylestownpa.org. It's right at the top of the page there. It'll keep you up to date on things happening across the township that week and volunteer activities, events, all that fun stuff. When I'm out door knocking for re-election this year, it's been nice to be able to go up to people and knock on the door and say, "Hi, I'm Dan Wood. I'm your township supervisor. I'm running for re-election, but before I get to that, is there anything you need help with regarding the township? Because I'm here and I want to work with you on that." And quite frankly, again, it's a customer service job. It's just what you do when you talk to people about that kind of thing. And a good example of this is a few weeks ago, I was talking with a couple, and they had a bike trail outside their neighborhood, which had this steep slope on it. And they were concerned, one of their neighbors who, as they said, was getting on in years, they were worried about him out there mowing it with traffic coming around. So what I did, I made a note, I went to my township staff, spoke with them later that week, and then I wrote a letter back to those folks with the different proposals we had to address this issue so that they wouldn't have to worry about it. A few days later, I got an email from the person who was going out and mowing, and he asked me to come out and take a look at it. And so that's what I did. I went out, met with him, talked a little bit with him about what the needs and what we're going to do. And, you know, this was all over the course of 2 weeks or so, but that's what the job is. You have to meet residents where they are and help them with their issues, because a lot of the issues residents are dealing with are with their homes. And I think when you can really meet people on that level, that's really when people start to think of you as accountable to them.
Okay, thank you. Joe, same question.
So being accessible to the residents of the township, extremely important. So as chairman of the municipal authority, I can tell you firsthand that when we send a crew out to part of the neighborhood, if we're looking to maybe do a project, and they start seeing people surveying, people get real nervous right away. You know, what's going on? What's going to happen in the neighborhood? So one of the things that we do is through community outreach is to make sure that we contact the residents in the area whenever we're going to be working on a project. Perfect example, we're in the middle of building a $4 million PFAS facility to treat the water for 2 of our well houses in the township. We're going to be removing manganese also. We talked about grants earlier, working with the township. We were able, and our representatives, we were able to secure a $4 million grant, which will cover most of the project for this one particular section of the township. But even when we were doing this, all along the way, because we had to build a large facility, a structure that was going to be in people's neighborhoods, first thing we did is we went out, we invited everybody in that neighborhood to come in, sit down, meet with us. We showed them renditions. We got the community involved. We got them involved in the design of the building, what it was going to look like, so that they were comfortable with how this was going to look in their neighborhood. So an open door policy, very important. And if I was fortunate enough to be a supervisor come November 4, one of the things I would push for, I think, one night a week or once every night every 2 weeks, I think we should have an open door where there's at least one supervisor on a rotating basis there for any member of the community to be able to walk in with a question, a concern, because not everything happens during the time that the township building is open from 9 to 5.
Thanks, Joe. All right. Dan, you're up first on this one. Question is, how will you balance short-term needs with long-term planning?
So one of the phrases you often hear with this is wants versus needs, and I like to look at it as kind of patience and opportunities. So to pull this off, what you need is effective planning, and the township's always been very good at planning, even before my time, where the Bike and Hike Committee is working off a 30-year-old master map that's laying the foundations for this. The Kids Castle Committee, their volunteers put together a roadmap that we're following. During my time as a supervisor, I've approved plans to transition all township operations to 100% renewable energy by 2050. I've also approved plans to renovate our parks over the next couple decades. But as we've spoken about, we can't jump on all these things right away. We have to watch our budget and see what works with that, and that's where the opportunistic patience comes in. The Bike and Hike Committee is a good example of this. A lot of those trails were built by asking developers to put part of a trail in. So you'll see we have these little trails here and there, and as grant opportunities come up and as funding frees up, then we can start connecting that. It takes a long time, but it saves the township money because we're not putting all this in at once. And I've been adapting this kind of policy for the south end of 611, where we have some development starting. The old the old movie theater, the Barn Plaza in general, is starting to go through redevelopment. And one of the things I made sure to look on is like, there's going to be a walking path there, right? Because we have a lot of residents at Grundy Hall right across the street that walk across 611 and up and down, and a lot of people that use the bus. I see it all the time. So looking for opportunities like that, and eventually I'd like to see that connected into the rest of the network. And to do that, you need a supervisor who knows the various plans that are happening in the township and know where to look and keep an eye out for those opportunities. And I like to believe that I've been that kind of supervisor the past 6 years.
Thank you, Dan. We go to Joe.
It's definitely a challenge of needs versus wants. Right? And if you put 10 people in a room, you're going to get 10 different answers as to what you should do first. But planning is definitely essential as part of that. As chairman of the Public Sewer Advisory Committee, we just recently submitted to the township our 537 plan, which is, if you guys remember back in the day, with the size of a New York City phone book, back when we had dial phones, right? We used to get them delivered to the house. Well, New York City phone book was, you could probably take somebody out with one. The 537 plan, when it's printed, is actually how big that is. But what it is, it's a roadmap for the future. So that, again, like I said, 30 years ago when I moved here to the township, it took over 25 years before we had sewers installed in my neighborhood. Along the way, though, there was residents that had to take money out of their pocket to rebuild, put new septic systems in. Those septic systems cost more than actually hooking up into the sewer system. There were some people that actually put a brand new septic in, and a couple years later, there was a sewer sitting right outside in the street in front of their house. So not only doing the planning, but communicating that to the residents, making sure that there are clear roadmaps for the future development of the township, whether it's through zoning, whether it's through the public water system, whether it's sewers, whether it's property development, no matter what it is, you need to have a clear plan that you stick to. And again, plans are fluid. They need to modify them slightly as you go through the future. But the residents of the township should be able to look towards those supervisors and the township managers that they are responsible to be able to help put together those roadmaps so they can understand and do their own planning at home for what they need to do with their property.
Thanks, Joe. Christina.
So the question of how to balance short-term needs with long-term goals really gets at the heart of good governance, right? But it's not one or the other. You can have both. What you need to do really is think really strategically and intentionally about how you budget. Make sure that you're getting that community input so you can align your financial decisions with, the community values. To me, it's important that, like I said, I'm raising a family here, so I am thinking toward tomorrow. It's important that every dollar we spend today is, intentionally spent to build a stronger community today and in the future. Otherwise, to me, it's hard to justify, right? We want to make sure that we're not skimping out on the big expenses here and there where, maybe you do spend up a little bit today so that it lasts 10 years longer, right? You have to consider maintenance as part of the long-term vision because especially as it relates to things like roads and infrastructure, that is an ongoing expense in terms of maintenance that you have to consider. Like I said, it's important to me that we are investing in the future, but I'm well aware that our needs have to be met before we do any of that. Those larger capital spending projects, like I said, will sort of be tabled until or only when our basic needs are met. The roads being paved and the water being clean and all of our staff being there. So I think you can have both. And Joe mentioned the thick phone book. The budget, if you've seen it at our meetings, is just as thick because, like I said, we're looking out 5 years and thinking really hard about how to achieve these short-term needs and those long-term goals.
All right. Thank you. All right. We're going to go to Joe, the next question. Why should voters trust you to represent their interests effectively?
Well, to start with, I'm already a proven leader here in the township. You know, with over 15 years on the Public Water Sewer Advisory Committee, probably actually close to 20 now, and also as chairman of the Municipal Authority. One of the things I believe that you have as a person in your own life is your word, and your word should mean something. And one of the things I made a commitment to Dan also, I didn't really know Christina at the time, but that when we were running this campaign, it was not going to be a negative campaign, that we were going to make sure that this campaign was above board and that it was about the issues. And, you know, so far I think we've all done that. And I think that's important. Your word as an individual, a handshake, I still believe in that. I still do business that way. Not everything's about a contract. Some things are just about a handshake between two individuals and making sure that both parties can honor that. And I've lived my life that way. I've proven it that way in my service to our community. And I have no intentions of changing if I'm fortunate to be a supervisor come November.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to jump over Dan and go to Christina.
So why should I be trusted to be township supervisor? You know, every single day, maybe I didn't share this earlier. I currently, like I said, work in investment operations for one of the world's leading wealth managers, and every single day there and at home with two girls and a family, I have to make hard decisions about people's health and wealth, and really consider every single angle. I'm extremely thorough. I too have been a proven leader in this town where, you know, I came right back to the town I grew up in and was appointed to the finance committee and have been really dedicated to serving the residents of this community. You won't find somebody who's more honest, maybe to a fault sometimes. You'll find that I'm kind and really hardworking. Anybody who knows me will tell you that my whole life I've been determined to get stuff done, but never at the expense of others, and not with ego. So, you know, I've sat across the table from CEOs and from, you know, formerly incarcerated people in some of my volunteer work, and I treat them the same way, with respect, with integrity, and with kindness, because that's how I was raised.
Okay. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I sure hope people trust me to advocate for them over the past 6 years, or I'm going to find out real quick come November 4th. So, for me, and again, I know I keep bringing it up, it's communication, it's talking with residents. When people have issues, you need to meet them where they are. And sometimes that's hard to do, right? Because people want one thing, they can't, and somebody else wants another thing. A good example, I'm just going to make this up off the top of my head, is if somebody comes up and is like, well, I want an ostrich in my backyard, and your zoning laws say I can't have an ostrich. What can I do about this? Okay, new one. Well, we got to talk with your neighbors. We got to talk with our planners. We got to look at all these other pieces and see where can we find like a middle ground here. And maybe we can come to terms of like, maybe a large chicken instead. You can have that in your backyard. And you know, I've done a lot of this over the past 6 years, especially when it comes to building projects, because a lot of times people have a building project, they're like, whoa, I don't want a new development behind my house. And the township can facilitate a lot of back and forth so that both parties end up being good neighbors and getting something they want out of it. And yeah, another one is looking at ordinances where we change the number of chickens that people can have in their backyard. And you know, look, at the end of the day, there are going to be neighbors that I have political disagreements with. I think everyone in this room can attest to having that situation. But as a supervisor, it has never and will never be an issue who you voted for when it comes to if you have access to clean drinking water at your house, or if you have a pothole in front of your driveway that needs to be filled. That kind of thing just doesn't matter. It's the job is making sure each and every resident is taken care of.
Thank you, Dan. Okay. All right. Did I get you on this one? I did. Okay. All right, great. So we have 3 questions left on the list, but we only have 5 minutes left in this session. So I'm going to pick my favorite of the final 3. And I'm going to give it to Christina first. And the question is, if you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be and why?
Well, I already touched on this. Our zoning code currently makes it sort of difficult to add, like I said, that apartment above your garage for your grown child or your grandparent to live on your property. It requires exceptions because they have to be family, and it requires planning and hearings and meetings. And life can turn on a dime, right? Maybe your grandparent has a fall. Maybe your child is going through divorce or is in between jobs or wants to come back here for a little bit while they shop for a house. I think it's really important that we think about that particular piece of zoning, because it also, like I said, could invite more skilled workers to our community. When my parents were empty nesters many years ago for the first time, they actually had traveling nurses renting out their basement. And it was a great way for them to earn a little bit of extra income, and for these skilled people, like I said, to be welcomed in the community by people who've lived here for decades, who know people, who might know people, and maybe they'll meet someone, or maybe they'll start a new friend group, maybe they'll lay down roots here too. So that's the piece of zoning that I think we need to take a close look at.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
Yeah, and my answer is going to be very similar to Christina's. It's revising our zoning policy and looking at what we can do, especially when it comes to the idea of accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. I sit on our planning committee in the township, and some of the, we talk about two things really facing us. It's the affordability for new residents to live here, and the affordability for existing residents to continue to live here and age in place if they so desire. And accessory dwelling units are really a great way of achieving both of those objectives. They're kind of like a small cottage you could build on your property, or as Christina said, sometimes an attachment. Sometimes you hear them referred to as in-law suites. Yeah, and for for people that want to move back into the area, it's an opportunity to live close to their family while they put down roots and establish their jobs and connections. For older people that would like to move back with their kids or maybe need the additional care, it gives them a chance to live close to family while also having some level of independence in their own space. I think we can all appreciate that. And then for people who don't have family members that want to take advantage of this, there's also advantages for being an older couple. Like, it's a source of income. It can also be a way to have somebody younger live with you if you need help doing things around the house or around the yard, or just somebody to check in on you. And as we've stated, like, these kinds of affordability issues have this knock-on effect of being able to help us with volunteers, being able to bring in nursing aides and people on these workforce level jobs. And I think that's one of the most impactful things we could do on the zoning board right now, or planning committee, zoning board, two different things, but very tightly coupled to address those issues.
Okay. Go ahead, Joe, you get the final word.
So one of the things that you've heard this evening talked about is affordable housing. One of the first steps in making housing affordable is making sure that the property taxes in the town are also affordable to live here. We live in a very diverse community. We have mobile home parks, we have apartments, we have townhouses, we have single-family homes. Just on my street alone, there are small ranch houses that are perfect, that are fabulous for first-time home buyers. So I disagree with the fact that Doylestown Township doesn't have properties that are available for those that want to be able to start out and start a family. And I also am concerned with regards to what could be considered spot zoning, which is basically where you take a particular property and you talk about changing the zoning or allowing the type of development that Dan and Christina have talked about tonight. It's not necessarily fair to the neighbors. You moved in, you bought a house on a piece of property that was zoned a particular way. You've lived there your entire life, and now suddenly somebody next door is taking their garage and turning it into, an extra small apartment for somebody to live in. That's not what you moved there for. That wasn't what the case was when you bought your home, and that may not be, in the best interest of you or your neighbors. So, like I said, I think there's plenty of housing available in our community. We just need to make sure that it's affordable for people to be able to move into Doylestown Township and start a family.
Thank you, everybody. That ends the prepared questions. I want to thank you all for your attendance and your attention to the candidates. I'd most of all like to thank the candidates. Being a supervisor is it's not a glamorous job, and it doesn't pay very well. And at the end of the day, they're here to serve the constituents, the community, and to try to make Doylestown Township a better place. I appreciate how respectful you are of each other and the audience and the stopwatch. And thank you for doing a good job of staying on the topics and not interrupting. And you really comported yourselves very well tonight. So thank you for that. And thanks again for you.
Thank you very, very much. And John, I really want to thank you for moderating. I agree. I thought everyone did a fantastic job. Thank you to all of you, and thank you so much for all each of you coming. Thank you.